All right, now let's begin. Let's start with creating a new document. Just hit File and select whatever preference you like. I'm going with A4, and then just hit OK. I pressed F on my keyboard to get a full screen, and now I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to open up the brush window and select and modify the brush that I'm going to be drawing and painting with. You can hit dual brush. I like to use that. It adds a lot of texture. Now I want to open up my color window and make sure I select a nice rich black or very dark gray. On the top menu where it says window, you can find and open your color window from there, as well as your brush and your layers. So now that I have selected my color, I want to modify my brushes. I also want to adjust the opacity and flow. You can see that on the top menu right here. And now I mentioned earlier that I like to use a dual brush. Make sure that your multiply is selected and that you select a texture of your choice that you would like to paint with. Adjust the spacing, and this really gives you a nice gritty feel to your painting, which is what I like to do when I sketch my concepts. I also like to paint with an angled brush. It allows me to have very thick and thin lines. Once we're done with configuring our brush setting, let's begin with the base foundation sketch. Now, drawing on the new layer that I had created earlier, let's start with the basic oval for the face. Now the pose for this concept is just going to be her looking at us directly straight on. We're just going to keep it simple for this one because I want to focus more on the technique and how I paint these character concepts. Now that I have the oval drawn out, I'm going to start with laying down the outline of where her features are going to be. The line going horizontally across is going to be her eyes, that's her nose, this is her mouth. I'm going to put in the neck now. And I want to kind of make the pose a little more interesting, so I'm going to make it as though her head is just tilted a little to the left, and we're going to put in the dress now at the bottom. Now I think that her face was a little too straight right here. I want to make it a little rounder and a little smoother, so I'm just going to redraw this area again. You can hit E on your keyboard to switch to the eraser, and then just hit B to go back to the brush. I usually do this often, and it makes for a much smoother drawing experience. You don't have to overthink, looking for the eraser or looking and switching back and forth from the brush. The hotkeys are such an effective way to paint and draw quickly on Photoshop. Now I am sketching in the outline for her hair, and I'm just going to give her like a very easy top bun, and this is going to be filled later in with like a very thick dark color and just make it kind of graphic looking. Now I'm going to draw in the shapes for where her eyes will be. I like to give my characters an almond-shaped look to their eyes, but this is a personal preference, especially when you're doing something this stylized. You can always change the eyes to look however you wish them to look, and however expressive or different you'd like them to be. I have actually done a eye tutorial on how to paint stylized eyes, so please do check that out. And now I want to start really defining my drawing. So I'm going to just go ahead and start outlining the eyes and adding in the eyebrows and really defining and cleaning up the shape and lines of my character. I like to give my concepts very thick eyelashes as well and pointed noses. And I like her eyebrows at this angle because it kind of gives her a very cheeky know-it-all expression, which I like. Now I'm going to be laying down the outline for where her lips are going to be. I have also done a previous tutorial on how I draw and paint lips. It's good to have a foundation when doing stylized stuff like this, a foundation on how to paint realistic lips. And it's when you have that, it's very easy to be able to kind of jump into making a very stylized image, because that way you know exactly where features are supposed to be. You intuitively know where the mouth will be placed, and it can make for a stylized drawing that makes sense. And now I'm just going to go ahead and start adding in the pupils. And I'm going to just color this in. And as you can tell, our foundation sketch is slowly coming together. And now I'm just going to outline again. This is the placement for where I'm going to have my jewelry, her big necklace. And, you know, I'm just going to define the edges of her hair again. So the foundation sketch is supposed to be very loose and rough. I encourage people that are attempting this to make sure not to focus too much on the details and rather on where things are supposed to be. You know, try and think of things as big shapes. The nose is a triangle. You know, the lips are also triangles, and the head shape is an oval. When you start to think of it this way, you are able to train your body to know where to put the attention and where to put the detail. And I'm just kind of putting in rough lines, you know, so it's an indication that this area is going to be dark. You know, I don't want to go ahead and right away jump in with adding in bold colors and, you know, strong, heavy lines. I'm just creating indications and markers of where things are supposed to be. That is the purpose of the foundation sketch. And it's supposed to be very loose and rough throughout. So now I'm happy with my foundation sketch. I'm going to lower the opacity a little because, you know, on another layer, I'm going to start with doing the outline. But first, before I attempt anything, I'm going to take a long, hard look at my sketch to make sure it works. Now, what I just did was I used the Lasso Tool. You can hit L on your keyboard or on the left over there and select your Lasso Tool. What it does is it creates a selection around your sketch. Make sure that you're on the right layer. When I circle around it, I'm able to make the image smaller or bigger. I hit Command or Control T on my keyboard. This pulls up the transformation settings. That way I can adjust whether to make my nose smaller or bigger or move it around. Maybe the lips are not in the right place. This is a very quick and efficient way to fix your drawing. This is one of the reasons I love Photoshop. You know, if I was doing this on a sketchbook with a pencil, I would have to pull out an eraser and, you know, erase the whole thing and sketch it out again. But with Photoshop, you can just take that shortcut. That's what it's there for. Now that we've finished with the foundation sketch, we can move on to the next video. I will show you how to create an outline based on this foundation sketch.